Do you, Kang Minjae, take Kaya as your lawfully wedded wife? The doors burst open. Heels. Sharp. Deliberate. Unhurried. Samantha walked up the aisle in red, a 2-year-old boy on her hip, 300 guests turning in their seats like a single organism responding to a threat. She stopped 10 feet from the altar and looked directly at Kang. Before you say your vows, look at your son. If you are new here, subscribe right now because what this woman just did in front of 300 people is only the beginning and you are not ready for what comes next. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight, the kind you feel in your chest. The string quartet had stopped mid-note. The flower girl in the front row looked up at the adults around her, trying to understand why everyone had stopped breathing. Kang Minjae stood at that altar and his face did not move. Not one muscle, not one flicker. The dead calm that had ended careers and emptied rooms sat on his features, like something carved. And in the stillness of it was something far more dangerous than anger. Anger was readable. Anger could be navigated. This was not anger. This was a man who had already begun calculating. Kaya stood in white and turned to look at Samantha. Not with shock, not with tears. Not with any of the things Samantha had rehearsed for during the 3 days she had spent preparing this moment. Kaya looked at her the way you look at a problem you have already begun solving, measuring, cataloging, unbothered in a way that was almost insulting. Samantha had walked in expecting a detonation. She had found 2 people who refused to explode. That was the first thing that scared her. She covered it immediately with performance. She bounced the boy on her hip. He was 2 years old and confused, and his eyes moved around the room searching for something familiar, and finding nothing. He reached toward a woman in the front row. Samantha yanked him back without looking at him. Kaya noticed this. Said nothing. But she noticed. Kang spoke. 1 sentence. Quiet enough that only the front rows heard the words, but the tone carried to every corner of the building. Clear the room. His men moved, Jong-soo at the left door and another at the right. They did not argue, did not explain, simply began moving 300 people toward the exits with the smooth, inevitable efficiency of water finding its way around stone. There were protests, there were craned necks and frantic whispered questions. None of it mattered. 4 minutes later, the cathedral held 6 people. Kang, Kaya, Samantha, the boy, Jong-soo at the door, 1 other man at the far wall, and the silence, which had by now become its own presence. Samantha recalibrated. She had prepared for an audience of hundreds. This smaller arena required adjustment, but she was nothing if not adaptable. She softened her voice, reached for sympathetic. I know this is a lot to process, she said, but he deserves to know his father. Whatever happened between us, Minjae, that child did not ask to be born into, what do you want? 4 words. Even, quiet, surgical. Samantha blinked. Reset. I want you to acknowledge your son. Publicly. And I want this. She gestured toward Kaya with the particular brand of dismissiveness that required years of practice to perfect. To end. Today. Kang turned to Kaya. No words. No question asked aloud. It was not 2 people seeking permission from each other. It was 2 people who had already reached the same conclusion through the same silence. Kaya gave the smallest nod. Kang turned back. We do the test. Wedding is paused until results. Samantha's mouth curved. She let out a breath dressed up as relief. That's all I'm asking. That's all I've ever... You can go. The curve disappeared. Excuse me? You've said what you came to say. His eyes moved to Jong-soo. She leaves. Samantha looked at Kaya one more time. Kaya was still watching her with that unbothered, measuring expression. The expression of a woman who had not once, in the last 10 minutes, looked afraid. It unsettled Samantha in a way she did not have language for yet. She had expected a woman in pieces. She had expected mascara running and shaking hands and a bride clinging to her groom. She had not expected this. She left. Jong-soo closed the door behind her. The cathedral held two people in wedding clothes and a silence that had transformed completely from what it had been an hour ago. Kang looked at Kaya. "Are you all right?" "I'm thinking," she said. "About the baby." She paused. He reached for a stranger in the front row while she was holding him. He couldn't settle against her. He kept searching the room for something familiar. She met Kang's eyes steadily. Children that age know their mothers, by smell, by sound, by the specific weight of how they're held. That child does not know that woman. The silence between them sharpened. "She brought someone else's child," Kaya said, not a question, a conclusion. Kang looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, not surprise, recognition. "I need to make a call." Kaya reached up and touched his jaw once, briefly, the first purely tender gesture between them since the doors had opened. "Go." Now here's the question the comments are going to fight about for days. Was Kaya too calm? Because most women would have been in tears on that floor. Was her composure a sign of strength, or does it mean she already had doubts about Kang before Samantha even walked in? Drop your answer below because this is going to split the room completely. Kang sat in the back of his car, and the silence he carried with him was a different quality from his usual silence. Usually his silence was chosen. This one was occupied, full of the specific movement of a man taking something apart in his mind piece by piece. Jong-soo sat beside him and waited. "She knew everything," Jong-soo said carefully. "The date? The venue? The ceremony time? Which side of the aisle each family was seated on? The name of the officiant?" Kang stared through the window. "Someone told her." The word landed in the car like something dropped from a height. Kang's organization was built on loyalty and fear maintained over years through consequence and respect. The idea that someone inside that circle, someone tested, proven, trusted, had sold information to Samantha. Not to a rival, not to someone with real power or strategic motive, to a spoiled woman with a bruised ego and too much inherited money. That was a betrayal wrapped in an insult wrapped in another insult. "Find them," he said, quietly. "Already started." Jong-soo paused. "There's something else. She's done this before. Dubai, 2019. A property developer. She convinced him a child was his. It cost him $4 million to make the situation disappear." The car moved through the city. Kang thought about the 3 years he had known Samantha. The beginning, electric, consuming, the kind of woman who filled every room she entered with herself and made you believe the room was better for it. The middle, controlling, corrosive, the need for reaction disguised as passion. The end, the morning he looked at her and felt nothing, and understood that whatever she had ignited had burned completely through its fuel. He had walked away cleanly. No argument, no confrontation, no explanation offered because none was owed. He had met Kaya 4 months later. The difference between the two women was the difference between noise and music. Samantha needed to be seen at all times. Kaya made rooms better without trying. She spoke when she had something to say and listened like she meant it and had looked at Kang, this man that entire organizations arranged themselves around in fear, and spoken to him plainly, without agenda, without the calculated warmth people deployed around powerful men like a tool. He had been genuinely surprised by her. He had not recovered from it. He had not wanted to. He made the call. "Use our doctor for the test. Nobody touches those samples but our people." Done. And find the insider before the test date. I want to know before I walk into that room. Across the city, Kaya sat in her mother's kitchen and was loved at maximum volume. Namsa moved between the stove and the table, powered by righteous fury, a wooden spoon in one hand and an opinion in the other. 4 ants talked over each other in rotating shifts of outrage. Kaya's cousin Thandi had drafted and been physically prevented from posting 3 separate social media statements. Kaya sat in the center of all of it, still in her wedding dress, drinking tea. "You are too calm," Nomsa said, pointing the spoon. "Something is not right with you. Any normal woman, crying is for after," Kaya said. "Right now I'm thinking." "Thinking," Nomsa repeated, it like the word had personally wronged her. "A woman walked into your wedding carrying a whole child, and you are sitting there thinking." "The child isn't hers, Mama." Every conversation in the kitchen stopped. 4 aunts, Thandi, all of them looking at Kaya. "She was holding him wrong," Kaya said. "Not wrong like someone who doesn't know babies. Wrong like someone who doesn't know that specific baby. He was looking for her in the room and not finding her. He couldn't settle because she wasn't the person he was looking for." She set down her tea. "She borrowed that child, bought access to him. Either way, he goes home to someone else tonight." The kitchen absorbed this. Nomsa sat down. Her voice changed, the fury replaced by something more careful, more maternal, the voice she used when she was talking to her daughter rather than at the situation. "So, what do you do?" Kaya opened her laptop. She called Kang. He answered before the first ring finished. "The child isn't hers." "I know." "Then let's finish this properly." She hung up, and she began. "Here is the thing about people who have been rich for so long, they have never faced a real consequence. They are careless in a very specific way. They cover their tracks, but not deeply. They cover them the way someone cleans a room before a guest arrives, not the way someone scrubs a crime scene." Samantha had paid a woman to loan her son for a day. She had routed the payment through a third party, but the third party had a name. Names had addresses. Addresses could be found. By midnight, Kaya had a name. By 1 in the morning, she had an address. By 2, she had sent a message from a number the woman had never seen. "I know what she asked you to do. I am not your enemy. Meet me." She closed the laptop, and for the first time since the doors had opened, she allowed herself to feel what the day had actually cost her. The tears came quietly, not from devastation, not from fear, from exhaustion. The specific exhaustion of being composed through a moment that deserved softness, of being a fortress when you wanted to be a person. She cried for exactly 12 minutes. Then she washed her face, braided her hair, and went to sleep. Because tomorrow, she had work to do. Meanwhile, inside Kang's world, Jong-soo moved with the quiet, methodical energy of a man who had done this before. He didn't ask questions directly. He watched. He noted who was nervous, who avoided eye contact in hallways they had walked for years without hesitation, who checked their phone in the specific way of someone waiting for something. It took him 18 hours. A young man, mid-level, ambitious in the way that becomes dangerous when it meets the wrong opportunity. Samantha had found him at an event 4 months ago. Charming, attentive, interested in him specifically in a way that felt like being chosen. He hadn't thought he was doing real damage. A date, a venue, an easy transfer of information that felt more like gossip than betrayal. Jong-soo sat across from him and said nothing. For 90 seconds, the young man held his composure. Then he talked. All of it. The approach, the payment, the specific details Samantha had asked for, the 3 follow-up messages she had sent confirming logistics. Jong-soo made one call. "It's handled." The young man was removed from Kang's circle by the end of the day, quietly, with the specific thoroughness of an organization that had been doing this for decades. He simply ceased to exist in that world. No confrontation, no announcement, no drama. Just gone. This moment revealed 2 things the audience needed to understand. First, Kang's world had real weight behind it, not just the aesthetic of power. Second, Samantha had been planning this for months. This was not an impulsive act of jealousy. This was a campaign. She had positioned her piece inside the organization before the wedding was even fully planned, which raises the question. And the comments are going to go to war over this one. Should Kang have told Kaya about Samantha before the wedding? He knew what she was. He knew what she was capable of. He knew she had done this before. Did he put Kaya in that situation by staying silent? Or was it his past to manage, and none of Kaya's business until it became her problem? Because some of you are going to say, Kang failed her before Samantha even walked through those doors. And some of you are going to say, a man's past is his own. Drop your position in the comments right now. The cafe Kaya chose was small and deliberately neutral. Not Kang's world, not the woman's neighborhood. Somewhere between. She arrived first and sat facing the door. Refilwe walked in looking like someone who had not slept and had spent the sleepless hours arguing with herself. Mid-20s. Careful eyes. The expression of a person who has done something they cannot fully undo and is learning to live inside that knowledge. She sat. They looked at each other. How did you find me? Refilwe asked. I traced the child, Kaya said. Once I knew what to look for, it wasn't difficult. Refilwe looked at her hands. She said no one would get hurt, that it was one day, that the money would... She stopped. Started again. I needed the money. I'm not here about why you needed it, Kaya said. Her voice was even, unhurried, without judgment, but not without weight. I'm here because a child was used as a prop, and the truth needs to come out. I need you in one room, one time, to tell it. She'll come after me. She won't be in a position to. Kaya slid a card across the table. My lawyer, your cooperation is exactly that. Cooperation. You will not be prosecuted. But I need you ready. Refilwe looked at the card, then at Kaya. She recorded our calls, for her protection, she said. A pause. I recorded them too. For mine. I have everything. Every instruction, every payment, her voice on all of it. Kaya did not lunge at this. Did not reach. Just held steady. Then you're not just a witness. You're the ending. Refilwe picked up the card. Cut to that same evening. Kaya on Kang's balcony looking at the city. Kang beside her. Close, but not touching. Their silence together had always been different from his silence with the rest of the world. This one was inhabited, warm, chosen. She had someone inside your organization, Kaya said. It's handled. I found the mother. I know. A pause. Jongsu told me. Kaya turned to look at him. Were you going to let me finish before telling me you already knew? The corner of his mouth moved. Barely. On his face it was the equivalent of a full laugh. I was watching you work. And? He looked at her with the particular quality of attention he gave to very few things. You didn't wait for me to solve it. You didn't panic. You didn't perform for anyone. A pause. You just moved. It needed to be moved on. Yes. He looked back at the city. But most people in that position would have been too consumed by the emotion to think clearly. I felt the emotion, Kaya said. I just didn't let it drive. Silence. She planned this for months, Kaya said. The insider, the child, the doctor. This wasn't jealousy, this was a campaign. She turned to face him fully. She wanted your money, Kang, not you. She wanted to be Mrs. Kang long enough to divorce you and take half of everything you've built. I know. Did you know before today? The question landed between them with a weight that neither of them moved away from immediately. I suspected what she was capable of, he said carefully. I didn't anticipate she would go this far. Kaya held his gaze. Should you have told me? The silence stretched. Yes, he said. I should have told you. It was perhaps the most honest thing she had ever heard him say. Not because it was complicated, but because it was simple. No defense, no justification, just the plain truth of a man acknowledging a failure without dressing it up. Kaya nodded once, filed it. Don't protect me from information again. No. He reached over and took her hand, didn't look at her when he did it, just held it. They stayed there until the city below them finished its noise for the night. Like this video right now, if you felt that moment, because that right there, that single word, yes, and that hand, said more than most people say in years. The conference room was in a legal office in Santon. Clean lines, expensive furniture, the specific atmosphere of a space designed to make consequential things feel manageable. It did not feel manageable today. Kang's legal team arrived first. 3 lawyers, sharp and prepared, arranged on one side of the long table with the coordinated calm of people who had already seen the ending and were simply here to watch it arrive. Kang sat at the center, Kaya beside him, Jong-soo at the door. Samantha arrived with her hastily, assembled legal team, and immediately the energy in the room rearranged itself around her entrance, the way it always did. She was dressed in cream, structured, every inch of her communicating the visual language of the reasonable party, the wronged party, the woman who was simply here to do what was right. She glanced at Kaya when she sat down. That glance. It carried everything she wanted it to carry. Pity layered over satisfaction, layered over the preemptive grace of a victor who can afford to be generous. Kaya received it with nothing. No reaction, no flinch, no answering look. She simply was not moved by it in any visible way, and that non-movement was somehow more devastating to Samantha than hostility would have been. The doctor entered. He placed the envelope on the table. His hands were steady, but his eyes moved to Kang once, briefly, with the involuntary guilt of someone who believes themselves unseen. He was not unseen, Kang noticed, said nothing. The doctor opened the envelope, cleared his throat, read. The results confirm that Kang Min-jae is the biological father of the child in question. Samantha exhaled, 3 days of held tension releasing in one breath. She turned to look at Kaya. Slowly, with great deliberateness, the smile that arrived on her face was the specific smile of a woman who has just watched everything she built finally land exactly where she aimed it. It said, I told you. It said, it's over. It said, look at what I just took from you without even trying. Kaya looked back at her, held her gaze, did not blink, did not move, did not give Samantha a single thing to feed on. Kang's lawyer reached into his briefcase. He placed a second document on the table. Not dramatically, not with emphasis. He set it down the way you set down something that has already completed its purpose, simply by existing. We'd like to submit results from an independent test, conducted simultaneously, separate laboratory, verified chain of custody from collection to analysis at every stage. The doctor's color left his face. Not the dramatic draining of a film, the real version, the subtle version. The way a person looks when the ground they chose to stand on shifts 3 inches in a direction it was not supposed to shift, and they understand that the shift is permanent. Samantha's lawyer leaned forward. On what basis? Standard practice, Kang's lawyer said without looking up. Our client's right to independent verification, particularly in matters of this significance. The second document was opened, read aloud. Kang Min-jae was not the biological father. The room became a different kind of place. Samantha's face, so carefully arranged, so precisely positioned, came apart. Not all at once, piece by piece, starting at the edges, the smile first, then the composure underneath it, then the arrangement of certainty that had been holding the whole structure up. Her lawyer reached for his collar. Kang turned his eyes to the doctor. He did nothing else. He simply looked at him, that dead, bottomless, temperature-dropping look. And the doctor started talking before a single question was asked. The envelope, the amount, the morning visit, the instructions, the absolute confidence of a woman who had done something like this before and believed that money was a more reliable foundation than truth. The doctor talked for 7 uninterrupted minutes, and when he finished, the silence in the room was the silence of something completed. Then Samantha did the thing she always did when a plan collapsed beneath her. She pivoted to the version of herself that had always worked before. The tears arrived with the specific timing of someone who had deployed them as strategy since childhood. Her voice broke at exactly the right moment. "I was manipulated," she said. "Someone told me I genuinely believed I would never fabricate something like this if I wasn't absolutely certain. I was just a woman trying to protect her." The door opened. Refilwe walked in. She had the posture of a decision that had been made and would not be unmade. Kaya's lawyer beside her. She crossed to the table and set her phone down without ceremony and pressed play. Samantha's voice filled the conference room. Clear, cold, specific. The voice of a woman who had never once in the conversation sounded uncertain, or manipulated, or anything other than completely in control of exactly what she was engineering. Every instruction detailed, every payment discussed, every contingency planned for. What Refilwe should say if questioned, what story to maintain under pressure, how to dress the child, what time to arrive. Her voice, unmistakable, undeniable. Samantha looked around the room, at the lawyers, at Jongsu, at Refilwe, who held her gaze with the steadiness of someone who had paid a price and was done paying it, at Kang, who had not moved, had not reacted, had watched the entire unraveling with the patience of a man who knew the ending before it started. Then she looked at Kaya, and Kaya stood up. She walked around the table, slowly, unhurried. She stopped in front of Samantha and looked at her at close range. This woman who had walked into her wedding in red with someone else's child on her hip and the absolute conviction that she could take everything apart. Samantha lifted her chin, refused to be the one who looked away first. Kaya let the silence sit between them for a long moment. Then she said, quietly, clearly, with the specific evenness of someone who has nothing to prove and knows it. "You came for what I have. You should have spent that energy building something of your own." She held Samantha's gaze for one beat longer. Two. Then she turned and walked back to her seat. She did not look back. Samantha sat in that cream outfit in that room full of people who had just watched her be completely, finally, publicly dismantled. And she had no response. For perhaps the first time in her life, she had no response. Not because the words had wounded her, but because they were simply true, and the truth of them went somewhere inside her that performance couldn't reach. Kang stood, buttoned his jacket. The sound of it in that silence was its own complete sentence. He looked at Samantha. "You're done." 2 words, quiet as everything he said, final as everything he meant. He walked out. Kaya rose and followed. Neither of them looked back. And now, the comment section is going to divide into 2 armies. One side saying Kaya's final line was perfect, exactly what it needed to be. The other side saying Samantha deserved something far worse than words. Which side are you on? Because I need to see this debate in the comments. And also, was Samantha really just a product of a father who gave her everything and taught her nothing? Does that make her a villain? Or a victim of her own upbringing? Drop it below. What Kang did to Samantha's world did not look like the movies. There was no confrontation, no threat delivered in a dark room, no visible machinery. It was quieter than that, and worse. Her invitation stopped, not all at once, the way light fades at the end of a day, so gradually you don't notice until you're already in the dark. Events she had attended for years, private dinners, industry gatherings where influence was maintained and connections were kept alive. The emails simply stopped arriving. Her father's business contacts became unavailable. Meetings that had always included her stopped mentioning her name. A deal she had been publicly celebrating for 2 months collapsed without explanation. Her lawyers found nothing actionable. There was nothing to fight, nothing to confront in court. Nothing that could be pointed to and challenged because nothing had been done to her that could be named. Kang had simply allowed the world he influenced, which was larger and quieter and more far-reaching than most people ever understood, to know what Samantha was. And the world had adjusted accordingly. She sat in her penthouse on a Thursday afternoon, identical to every other Thursday in that apartment. Same furniture, same view, same wardrobe, but every door that had mattered was closed, and they were closed in a way that had no handle on her side. Her father called. She let it ring. He called again. She answered on the third attempt because she was tired of the sound. He had spent 24 hours making calls. She could hear it in his voice, the slightly thinner confidence of a man who had always been able to purchase solutions, and was encountering for the first time the specific frustration of a problem that didn't have a price. "I'm going to fix this," he said. "There's a number. Every man has a number." "Not this one." "Samantha, I told you, Dad, not this one." Silence on the line. She had grown up watching her father solve every problem she created with money and connection and the smooth machinery of a man who had never once allowed his daughter to face a consequence. She had learned from that. She had learned that money was the solution, that confidence was the strategy, that what she wanted was what she was entitled to simply by virtue of wanting it badly enough. She sat in everything that lesson had purchased her and looked at the view from her penthouse and understood, in the quiet that had no exit, that somewhere between the learning and the living she had mistaken entitlement for power. They were not the same thing. Her father made the call to Kang anyway, because he was who he was. The conversation lasted 80 seconds. Kang's voice was even, unhurried. "She walked into my wedding. Used a child, bribed a doctor, planted someone inside my organization, did this to access 50% of what I have spent my life building." A pause with the quality of a door being held open to make a point. "What number accounts for that?" Samantha's father did the arithmetic, found he didn't have enough. "There isn't one," Kang said. "Make sure she understands what she walked into." He ended the call. Jong-soo at the door met Kang's eyes. "Venue confirmed for Saturday. Same arrangements." Kang nodded. Then, after a moment, the kind of after a moment that meant something had been considered, and decided, "Has she eaten today?" Jong-soo understood immediately who he meant. "Her mother's house, since this morning." Kang straightened his jacket. "I'll go. Should I call ahead?" "No." Nomsa opened the door and found Kang on her front step, in a plain dark jacket with no entourage and nothing in his hands. He looked, and Nomsa would later describe this to every single person she knew, like a man who understood he was somewhere his usual authority meant nothing and had come anyway. She assessed him for a long time, the way a mother assesses the person standing between her child and everything she raised that child to deserve. He met her eyes, then lowered his head in a bow. Not performed, not strategic. The bow of a man asking to be let in by someone whose opinion he had decided to earn. Nomsa stepped aside. What happened next was not something Kang could have prepared for because there was no version of his life that had prepared him for it. He was surrounded within 60 seconds. Nomsa's sisters arrived from multiple rooms with the coordinated energy of women who had been waiting for exactly this. Food appeared. Questions came in 3 languages without waiting for answers. Opinions were offered at full volume and simultaneously. Thandi, 17, fearless, entirely unburdened by the concept of Kang Min-jae as anything other than a man who needed to learn a dance, planted herself in front of him and informed him that this was happening whether he wanted it to or not. He looked at her. She looked back with the serenity of someone who had never once considered that adults might be afraid of this man. He attempted the dance. There are no words that adequately describe what followed. His timing was wrong. His footwork was wrong. His expression throughout, that same dead calm, unreadable, sends chills down your spine expression, remained completely, magnificently unchanged from the expression he wore when making decisions that moved economies. He was stiff in a way that suggested his body had never been asked to do anything playful and was processing the request as a threat. The room erupted. Kaya stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room and watched him. She had known she loved him. She had known it for months with the quiet certainty she brought to most things. But knowing and feeling are two different countries. Standing in that doorway, watching Kang Min-jae, feared, silent, immovable, stand in her mother's living room and be completely, irreversibly, helplessly human in the middle of her family's warmth. She felt it, fully, without reservation or qualification. She stayed in the doorway and let herself feel it completely, and did not look away from a single second of it. Later, the house settled into the comfortable aftermath of a family that had fed someone and was satisfied with itself. Namsa had pressed containers of food into Kang's hands in the specific language of acceptance that she used for people she had decided to keep. The aunts had retired with the energy of women who had assessed something important and reached a unanimous verdict. Kaya and Kang stood outside under the night sky. The Johannesburg night was warm, and the city moved at a distance, and neither of them felt any urgency to fill the space between them. "You weren't afraid," he said, "of any of it." "There were moments," she said honestly. "When Rafilwi was late to the cafe, I thought, what if I miscalculated? What if she went back to Samantha?" She paused. "That scared me, but not Samantha herself." "Samantha is loud and she has money and she had a plan." Kaya turned to face him. "But she never understood what she was actually disrupting. She thought she was coming for a wedding." The word settled between them with its full weight. "She didn't understand she was coming for us. You can't dismantle something you don't understand." Kang was quiet. "She understood enough to find someone inside," he said. "It wasn't a defense. It was honesty." "Yes. And you found him." He said. Kaya looked at him. "We found him," he said. "We finished it." He reached over and took her hand. He didn't look at her when he did it. He looked forward, at the city, at whatever lived beyond the edges of what they could see. She held his hand, looked forward too. This was the vow, right here, before any officiant said a word. This was already the vow. Subscribe if you are still here, because what just happened on this balcony is what the whole story was building to, and what comes next is going to make you want to watch from the beginning again. The venue on Saturday was identical to the venue the Saturday before, and nothing like it at all. Same flowers, same gold light through the cathedral windows, same arrangement of chairs that had emptied in 4 minutes 7 days ago. But the air inside had changed. It held the quality of a space where something has been tested at full pressure and held completely, and everyone sitting in it understood that without needing it explained. Kaya's world filled one side, loud, warm, dressed with the specific extravagance of people who understand that celebrations are not small things. Namsa in the front row in a dress that had required 3 weeks and 2 fittings to exist. Thandi beside her, filming already, crying already, managing somehow to do both at maximum capacity. The 4 aunts arranged like a council of women who had lived long enough to recognize a love worth witnessing. Kang's world filled the other side. Composed, dark-suited, still. Men and women who had learned the aesthetic of his world and wore it like a second skin. Jong-soo in the second row, with his hands clasped and his face arranged in the closest thing to emotional that his face permitted. 2 completely different universes on opposite sides of an aisle, choosing the same room, creating between them something that belonged to neither world exclusively and was larger than both. The music began. The doors at the far end of the cathedral opened. Kaya, she wore white again. She had decided this specifically and deliberately, not because she had forgotten what happened the last time she stood in white in this building, because nothing that had happened changed what today was. Samantha had tried to take the day. She had not taken the dress as well. She stood at the doors, and she was breathtaking in the way of someone who has never needed a room's permission to belong in it. Tall, elegant, completely at home in herself, walking forward on her own terms, and gracious enough to allow the room to witness it. Kang turned the moment she appeared. That face, the face that had stayed composed through confrontations and confessions, and a fraud conducted in a formal legal setting, that face did something when it found Kaya in the doorway. His eyes softened. Not dramatically, not in a way that announced itself. But Young-soo saw it from the second row, and something in his chest moved. Nomsa saw it and pressed her hand over her mouth. Thandi pointed her phone directly at him and later said she knew in that moment what the video would do. He watched Kaya walk the entire length of the aisle and he did not look away once. Not when the flower girl scattered petals unevenly. Not when Kaya's youngest cousin stood up uninstructed for a better view and had to be pulled down. Not when someone in the back row released a sob slightly louder than the music and didn't apologize for it. He watched her all the way to him. She took her place at his side. The officiant began. They moved through the opening words, through the declarations. They reached the part where the officiant asked if anyone present had cause to object, and the entire room held a collective breath, one loaded, suspended second, before releasing it into something halfway between relief and laughter. The vows. At the back of the room, a door opened. Quiet, precise. A suited man entered and moved along the far wall to Young-soo and pressed a sealed envelope into his hand. Jong-soo's eyes moved to the contents. His expression shifted, the specific shift of a man receiving information that requires immediate action. He looked up, found Kang across the length of the cathedral. Kang was already looking at him. He had felt it. Whatever sense he had developed over years of operating in a world where information arrived without announcement and required response. He had felt the shift and found Young-soo in the same moment. Jong-soo found him. Jong-soo held his gaze. Communicated urgency in the economy of expression they had developed over years. Kang understood completely. He held Jong-soo's eyes for one beat. Two. His expression did not change. But something in it settled, a decision being made with the quiet finality of a man who knows exactly what he is choosing and what he is choosing over. He gave the smallest headshake. Not now. He turned back. Back to the officiant. Back to the vows that were waiting. Back to Kaya, who had perhaps seen the silent exchange and was watching him now with those steady, knowing eyes. The eyes of a woman who understood that his world never fully stopped and was watching to see, one more time, what he would choose when it pulled at him. He chose her. He faced her fully. When the officiant nodded to him, he looked at Kaya and spoke quietly, with the certainty of someone who has finished deliberating. He said she was the first person in years who had made him want to explain himself. He said he had watched her build their response from her mother's kitchen in a wedding dress and understood that he did not need someone to stand behind him. He needed someone willing to stand beside him. He said she was exactly that and had been from the beginning. He said that nothing which had tried to interrupt this had managed to, and nothing that would try afterward would manage to either. Because you are not something that can be interrupted, he said. You are already whole. I'm not completing you. I'm choosing to be chosen by you. And I intend to spend the rest of my life being worth that. The silence after was the good kind. The full kind, the kind that means something has landed exactly where it was meant to land. Kaya blinked once, then she smiled, the real one, the one that lived only in her mother's kitchen and her own quiet certainties. And now here, in front of everyone, she spoke her vows and said that love was not a feeling that arrived and maintained itself without effort. It was a decision remade every morning. She said she had watched him give her room to handle things herself, while remaining close enough that she never had to. She said that was the exact shape of what she wanted, and she had not known how to name it until she found it. She said yes. He said yes. The rings. The pronouncement. The moment. Jong-soo started clapping first, which was unusual enough that the man beside him turned in surprise. Then Nomsa was on her feet with her hand over her heart and tears making no attempt to be quiet. Then Thandi, then the aunts as one unified force. Then both sides of the room were standing, and the cathedral was full of the sound of people who had come back for this specifically, who had sat through the weight of the previous week and earned this moment. Kang cupped Kaya's face in both hands, this man who touched nothing carelessly, pressed his forehead to hers. She closed her eyes. They stayed in that moment for a beat that belonged to no one else in the room. No performance, no audience acknowledgement, just them. Then they turned, faced forward, walked back down the aisle together through the standing, celebrating, overflowing room, her hand in his, both of them looking ahead, into whatever the world outside held next. Which would be complicated, which would be loud, which would continue to produce sealed envelopes and situations that required Jong-soo's careful face across crowded rooms. But they would meet it the way they had met this, quietly, together. Already 3 moves ahead. The envelope. Jong-soo would hand it to Kang that night. Kang would read it, fold it, return it with 3 words of instruction. Handled by Monday. The comments will argue for weeks about what was in it. A new threat from Samantha. Her father's final move. An old rival resurfacing. A complication from Kang's world that had been waiting patiently for the wedding to end. No one will be told, because that was never the story. The story was what Kang chose when the envelope arrived in the middle of his vows. The story was a woman who traced a child from her mother's kitchen in a wedding dress at 2 a.m. The story was 2 people who moved through a week designed to destroy them, and came out the other side still standing, still chosen, still facing forward. Fade to black. Before you say your vows, look at your son. She looked. She saw exactly what it was. And she said yes anyway. If you made it to the very end of this story, you are the kind of viewer this channel was built for, and you deserve every second of what just happened. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a story. Drop a like if Kaya lived in your head this entire time and you would have crumbled on day 1 where she held it together. And now, the question that is going to break this comment section completely: was Kaya too calm throughout all of this? Does a woman who doesn't cry, doesn't break, doesn't fall apart even once, does she actually love him? Or is that composure a sign that she was never really shaken because she was never really all in? And while you're at it, Samantha grew up with a father who fixed everything with money and taught her that want equals entitlement. Is she a villain? Or is she a woman who was failed so completely by the people who raised her that she never learned to be anything else? Drop your answer, start the debate. This comment section is about to become its own story,